All right, well, good morning, everyone. Hello to those of you watching on YouTube, and welcome to another session of 30 Minutes With. This is Downtown Spokane's recurring webinar series in which we bring to you local industry experts and community figures to talk about some of the more pressing topics of the day. My name is Kevin Campbell. I am the Business Relations Coordinator for the Downtown Spokane Partnership and Business Improvement District. And today we are honored to have our featured presenter, James Lowe. James is the music director for the Spokane Symphony. He came on board in 2019 and is the 8th conductor in the orchestra's 76-year history. So Spokane is certainly lucky to have him, and we're lucky to have you here today, James. He's going to be speaking with us about the importance of a city having its own orchestra and why classical music is still relevant and why it still matters today. So before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to just put them into the chat box and we'll queue them up there. And we can use the time with the remaining time at the end of this segment to where we'll do a live Q&A and get to any of those questions. And then at the very end, we'll use the last few minutes to do the drawing for our tickets to see the Spokane Symphony, where you get to see James conducting live in action. I was fortunate enough to go last weekend. James saw you live in action on Saturday, and I need to say it's a treat. So thank you to Allison and the whole team at the Symphony and the Martin Wolfson Theater at the Fox for providing this opportunity. Very exciting. So lastly, for anyone watching, if you're not already watching on YouTube, I will just note that we do have our whole 30 Minutes with series there, so you can always reference this content and share it, as well as all of our other previous sessions anytime you'd like. So be sure to check that out at downtownspokane.org. So without any further ado, I'll now turn things over to James. James, thank you so much for being here in Spokane and bringing your talents here, and then thank you for being with us today. So if you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's nice to talk to you all. So I'm James Lowe. I am the 8th music director in the 76-year history of the orchestra, which shows it's kind of a plum job for those lucky of us to get it. As you can tell from the accent, I'm not originally from Spokane. Those guessing Alabama are slightly off as well. I'm originally from Nottingham, England. Lived in lots of different places, and now I spend about a third of the year in Spokane with the symphony. So our season runs September through end of May, so I'm here most of that time. And for the rest of the time, I live in the Scottish borders with these two. This is my wife Charlotte and my dog Humphrey. Charlotte's the one on the left. So I kind of wanted to speak to you a little bit about why does a city need an orchestra? What's even the point? What is the role of an orchestra in the 21st century? Isn't it just something that's terribly outdated? Well, firstly, it's not just a machine for generating concerts. We are far more than just a bunch of musicians just doing music. We bring a kind of cultural richness to the town. As Kevin said, we've had an orchestra here for 76 years. It's an interesting thing, I think, when you look at, if you remember the WikiLeaks scandal of all things, which seems to me now to be slightly more innocent times, if anything. One of the things that was interesting to me in the leaked communications was that having a symphony orchestra was seen by the American government as how developed a region was. That was a really interesting thing for me. So it's a great cultural asset for us just to have in general, and it reflects Spokane's identity. We don't just play one kind of music at the symphony. We have a huge range of music that we play. So our core symphonic work is what we call our Masterwork series. Pre-pandemic, we did 10 of these a year. This year we're doing 7, and next year we're going to be back up to 9. So we're, going back to normal. These are always on a Saturday evening and a Sunday afternoon. Saturday evening at it will be 7:30. Spoiler alert! Next year we do 8 at the moment, and 3 on the Sunday afternoon. And we get some international artists in from all over the world. This is Inon Barnantan. He's going to be the piano soloist in Tchaikovsky's first piano concerto in our concerts April 23rd, 24th, which is the last concerts of our Masterwork series this year. The orchestra, we start rehearsing on Tuesdays and we give the concerts Saturdays and Sundays. And we get about, over a weekend, well over 1,000, 1,500 people come through and hear this classical series, which is a huge number, actually, when you stop and think about it. So that's kind of our core work. We also have a pop series. This is Pink Martini, with whom we had a gig about a month or so ago, which I conducted, which was incredible fun. They were awesome as always. That was a total sellout. So we have a pop series next season. We have 5 in our pop series. These are generally kind of not classical music, can be anything from Cirque du Soleil kind of concerts to bands playing with the orchestra. So it's a kind of very, very wide range of stuff that's a little bit lighter, perhaps. We also have what we call specials. We did a special with Leslie Odom Jr. at the beginning of the season as a co-pro with Whitworth University, which I was very lucky to get to conduct, and was, again, astonishingly good fun. And he was absolutely brilliant. But our specials also encompass things like Harry Potter concerts that we do around Halloween, where we really go to town dressing up the lobby and have activities for the kids and play music from the movies. And talking of movies, we also have a movie series. So May 7th and 8th, sadly not May 4th. We couldn't quite make it work for May the 4th, but we're doing Star Wars in concert with the full orchestra, which of course is an amazing thing to see. If you haven't been to one of these shows, it's fantastic. I'm not sure, I think there are some tickets left for that. But that's obviously a huge thing we do. We also do every year an annual performance of Beethoven 9 on New Year's Eve. This is a tradition started by my predecessor, Eckhard Preu, who is originally from East Germany, and he's in Germany. That was East Germany at the time when he was growing up. Beethoven 9 on New Year's Eve was a big tradition. So it's something he imported to Spokane, and we've been doing this for many, many years. And there's always a big sellout and a rather lovely way to end the year on a message of hope. We also have a chorale, which of course is who sings in Beethoven 9. And next week, in fact, we'll be doing Carmina Burana. I'm going to try and play you a little bit of the music. It may not work over Zoom. Anyway, if you're a fan of Old Spice Aftershave, you'll definitely know that. So that's a piece we're performing next week. Tickets are still available. So that's that kind of specials work. In the pandemic, of course, we couldn't play to a live audience. So in the spring of last year, we did our Overtone series, where we had the orchestra distanced out on stage and filmed for a series that we put out on the internet. Now, this was 6 episodes, and I wanted to get away from this kind of just filming a bunch of musicians on stage and do something a bit different. So what we had was each episode had a theme, and the theme was explored through the music that we play, but we'd also get guests from the Inland Northwest in to talk about their perspective of the theme. And I'll just play you very briefly a little trailer from that so you can see the kind of work that we were doing. These 5 concerts won't only feature the musicians of the wonderful Spokane Symphony, but also explore different themes in each episode through music and ideas. We've invited some of the most engaging people from the Inland Northwest to come and discuss these ideas from their perspective. It's something I've always wanted to do, as I'm fascinated by how the same thoughts, emotions, and ideas find new ways of expression throughout human history. So that was our Overtone series, which is still available until I think April is when we take it down. But that's still going. If you're interested in that, you can find that on our website. In the summer season, we also, we've done that. In the summer season, we also performed at a couple of other venues, Brick West Brewing and Arbor Crest. We did concerts there as part of our summer season. We're looking at another summer season coming up, you'll hear details about that, I hope, quite soon. Our season launch is in April, but there's quite some nice summer plans shaping up there too. The third reason, I think, a symphony is a place to escape into the extraordinary. We're living in a kind of digital age. I mean, we're on Zoom now. I don't know about you, but I think I'm pretty sick of Zoom at this stage. The digital has permeated everything we do. We have our phones with us all the time. We're totally connected. Coming to a concert hall gives you a chance to unplug, switch off from that world, and step into somewhere totally different. And if you've not seen over 70 highly trained professional musicians really giving everything on stage, it really is a treat. We don't just do concerts. Everything I've mentioned so far has been concerts. We also have an education and outreach wing. We call it our Connect department. So this coming week, as well as coming to Vaasa, it's a busy week. We're also having Symphony Day on the 4th and 5th. Symphony Day is when we bring 4th and 5th grade students into the concert hall. In the thousands, we bus them in. We do 4 concerts and pack the hall each concert, and we introduce them to the orchestra in a kind of light program. It takes about 45 minutes. I chat about this year. The theme is how you can portray people in music. How can you portray people's personalities through music? How do instruments do that without words? So that's the theme of this year's Symphony Day. And as I say, we get thousands of children in every year. Last year, of course, we couldn't do it because of the pandemic, but we're delighted we can do it again now. We have a series of masterclasses when international artists come through. They also have to do an education part of their work for us. So we have masterclasses on stage at the Fox on the Friday afternoon before a Masterwork series. We'll be starting later this year a dementia project. Research has shown how incredibly impactful music can be on those suffering from dementia in reconnecting them. As I always say, music is the first language we learn and it's the last language we lose. So having musicians go and work with dementia sufferers can be hugely impactful. And this is a project we've had on the back burner since the day I started, and we were about to start executing it when Corona came in. So again, with these individuals, we wanted to wait until things were a bit clearer. So later in this year, we'll be starting the dementia project. We also, through Carnegie Hall, have what we call the Lullaby Project, which is where young mothers write a letter to their new baby. A composer sets that to music, and we record that just for them as a lullaby, which is a lovely way of helping mothers connect with their new children. That's the project through Carnegie Hall. Also through Carnegie Hall is a project called Link Up, where, as you can see from that photo, that's one of our previous Link Ups. It's a participatory concert. So the kids come, they don't just watch an orchestra, they actually play along. They all learn a tune on the recorder, and everybody plays along with the symphony. So they can say they've performed with the Spokane Symphony. That's, as I say, that's another really lovely project through Carnegie Hall. Every year we do annual Parks concerts. This is Comstock. We will be going back to Comstock this year. There was flood damage the past summer, but we're going back to Comstock next year. This year we did it in the Pavilion, which was a fantastic venue. So we do all of these different things in Spokane. And I think, as we're all knowing, Spokane is a growing city, and we're trying very hard in the symphony to be part of that growth and to be a driver of that growth. And I think I have spoken to a lot of people who have said to me, actually, I was amazed when I came to Spokane that they had a symphony. And then when I heard them, I was even more amazed how incredibly good they are. So I think it is an attraction, and it shows that Spokane is a fully developed cultural hub. The second 3 questions we're going to answer quickly are, why classical music? What possible relevance does classical music have in the modern world? So here are 3 reasons. So yes, it's relevant. You may think that a piece of music written 150 years ago has nothing to say about our modern world, but I think you'd be surprised how little humans have changed over that time. Technology has changed, but we have pretty much stayed the same emotional apes that we always were. And human emotion, I think, has remained constant. And these composers who wrote these incredible pieces of music, when I listen to a piece of music written by, say, for Beethoven, I often have this feeling that someone has trodden this ground before. I'm not alone. You feel this connection to somebody who died long time ago. And there's this connection that their emotions and their lives still touch you today. I think that's an incredible thing, this over centuries connection. And as I say, I think our emotions haven't changed, and classical music reflects that. Classical music is not just one thing. Life is not one emotion. We're never just happy and we're never just sad. It's incredibly complicated, and classical music is also emotionally complicated in the same way that real life is. It's also incredibly varied, from the religious fervor of J.S. Bach through the drama of Beethoven, the romantic sweep of Brahms, the totally over-the-top world of Gustav Mahler, to the modern new sounds of contemporary living composers like Anna Klein. We just performed her cello concerto a couple of months ago here, which was a huge hit, but using totally different sounds from an orchestra that you wouldn't expect and making it sound totally different. So I would say, whatever mood you're in, whatever mood you want to be in, there's a piece of classical music that will do the job. And when I'm designing a classical concert, my idea is that it should be a journey. You start in one place and you come out the other end. So when we did the concerts last weekend, we started with the Ukrainian national anthem for obvious reasons, but we started with this rather somber overture, and then we ended with a symphony that was just full of joy and happiness and fun. So the idea is you go on a journey, we change your emotional state as you sit through our concerts. And the third reason I think classical music is really important is unity. We are living in a time which I think we all feel increasingly fractured and divided. And as Jeff von Saal, our executive director here, says, an orchestra shows the heights humanity can reach when we unite together for a common cause with uncommon fervor. I love that quote from him. So we all train as musicians from a very, very young age to master our instruments, but it's really only by playing together in harmony that an orchestra works and creates this kind of magic. And I think for me, that's a great metaphor for society. And it's a great reminder of what humanity can achieve when we work together in harmony. And finally, I'm just going to explode a few common myths before we open it up to questions. Here's something I hear a lot. I love classical music, but, and what usually follows the but is, but I don't understand it. I didn't study it. I don't know why there's this myth that in order to understand classical music, you have to have a PhD, a doctorate in musicology. I don't think you do at all. It's a little bit like saying, I love sports, but I was never a professional athlete, so therefore I can't understand how it all works. You don't need anything. If you've got a pair of ears, only one of which needs to work, and a beating heart, you have all the equipment you need to understand classical music. There's no special training you need. Myth number 2 is it's terribly, terribly serious and forbidding, and it's a holy place where you need to go and behave yourself. Well, maybe that was true a while ago. That rather forbidding looking chap is Fritz Reiner, who used to conduct the Chicago Symphony. But times have changed. This is a photo from our photo shoot with Mateusz Wolski and I, our concert master. If you haven't met Mateusz, he's a force of nature. He's a hilarious, hilarious man. We have a huge amount of fun working together. And I think when the orchestra is all on stage, we play some serious music, but we also play with such passion and joy. And we also play stuff that's a great deal of fun. So it's not this terribly serious worshipping of the holy art that I think people tend to think it is. And the final myth is that it's a gated community. We want to keep people out apart from a certain kind of person. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. We want everybody. We want the symphony to be there for everybody. Our range of work is done quite consciously to try and provide something for everyone. What I want is that when you pick up a brochure of the symphony, you open it, and everybody in Spokane, at least one event, they'll say, oh, that's something I can't miss. I have to go and see that. So we want everybody to be included. And I think the final line I'll leave you with before we just open it up for questions is, playing Bach isn't elitist. What's elitist is keeping it for ourselves.
Well, brilliant. Thank you so much, James. We appreciate it. We'll go ahead and take things. We'll take some questions now. So if you'd like to use the chat box or go ahead and take yourself off of mute, we'd love to hear what you have to say. James, just to kick things off, I'm kind of curious, on that last note when you said, you want to make it accessible, how do you personally go about, excuse me, striking that balance of, what I feel like must be some sort of desire to preserve classical music, but then also make it really accessible and do some of these things, like you said, with collaborating with Tink Martini, or kind of, when you play the score to Star Wars, for instance.
Yeah, well, I think it's a couple of things. I think firstly, Mahler said, tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire. And I totally agree with that. So the first thing is that everything we do, we've got to do passionately and with real love and joy. That's the most important thing, because if we sit on stage looking bored, frankly, there's no reason why anybody should come and see it. So that's part one. Part two to that question, I think, is having a balanced scorecard, having a balance of works that we do. So we have a classical season, that's our core work. We have a pop season, that's our core work. But we also have all these specials. We have education work. We do free outdoor concerts. This year, by the way, I forgot to mention, we're doing a free family concert in June at the Fox. So, for me, it's about having points of access where people can jump in, put a toe in the symphony, and then realizing, I really like that. Maybe they're surprised. Maybe they're love classical music and have loved it for years. Also worth pointing out, by the way, is I was reading some statistics about what people have been listening to in the pandemic, and the classical radio stations have had a huge uptick in listenerships in the pandemic. I make no comment, but I just leave that out there.
Excellent, thanks. Well, I'll give, I'll keep an eye out for any mics going unmuted if anyone has any other questions. In the meantime, James, I'm also kind of curious. It sounds like you've worked around Europe before. You hail from the UK. What sort of differences have you noticed in the either popularity or just sort of interest in classical music here in the US versus in the UK or Europe?
I think that's a very good question. I mean, I would say firstly, the kind of underlying culture, I think, plays a big role. So, for example, in Germany, their big cultural hero is Beethoven. So classical music has always been a big thing because they're very proud of Beethoven. In England, of course, our big cultural hero is Shakespeare. So for us, the theatre has always been more kind of predominant than classical music. Now, I would say that the American audience and enthusiasm for classical music is probably higher than the British, in my experience. I think there's got a lot to do with a different culture. I think in Britain, we're still very much divided along class lines, and we feel we don't want to stray into a different, if you come from a certain kind of family, you feel you probably don't belong in other places, which is, I think, totally wrong, but we're still obsessed with that, unfortunately. And I think you're not hindered by that in America. So people, I think, are much more open-minded about going to something that they maybe hadn't thought about going to before. So I think for me, that's a big difference. Yeah, I think so. I don't feel that there's any, as I say, I think that this language is not something you need special training for. So I don't think in that sense there's really any difference in that regard to an American audience as opposed to a European one.
Oh, great. Well, thanks so much. Well, we have just a few minutes left. So what I'd like to do before we go, of course, is I'm going to turn things over to my colleague and our marketing and programming director, Elizabeth Hooker. And she is going to be making an announcement on these tickets that we are going to be giving away to see James and the Spokane Symphony.
Good morning, James. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. I know I personally have been a season ticket holder. We're so lucky to have the symphony here in Spokane. I love to show it off to all my friends around the country and say, well, do you have the quality that we have here? Thanks everyone for being in attendance today. Of course, this is happening live, and we'll also be sharing it out via our social channels, as Kevin mentioned earlier. So please share this recording once we post it with your friends who didn't have an opportunity to tune in today. And for those of you who are with us here live, the symphony has graciously donated or contributed concert tickets for you to have an opportunity to see the symphony in person. And luckily we have enough that we are able to, I think, give everyone in attendance today some tickets. So what we're going to do is I will draw them for the specific concerts that you're selected for, and we will reach out to you personally with information about those. I believe we have all of your emails. Is that correct, Kevin?
Yep. Yeah. So we will be able to get in touch with you.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much
yeah.
for having me.
Yeah, James, is there any last parting thoughts you'd like to leave us with before we sign off today?
No, I think just to say that if you haven't been to the symphony, that the other thing that people say to me sometimes is they say like, oh, I'm really sorry I haven't been. Like, well, like there's an obligation. Of course, there's no obligation to see the symphony. You should want to go. But I think if you haven't been, you may be surprised at how fun and exciting this enterprise is that we've got here. So yeah, come on down. You're always welcome at the Fox.
Actually, yes, I'd have to absolutely echo that. Like I said, just got to go see Spokane Symphony for the first time on Saturday, and it was a delight and such a great journey. Like you said, you're along for the ride, and it's a very fun ride. So thank you, James, and thank you again, Allison of Spokane Symphony. We appreciate you being here and everything you've said today. And with that, we'll go ahead and sign off. So thank you for everyone that was in attendance and watching, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.